In this section, we're going to be discussing custom transaction data sources. Now, setting up custom transaction data sources is almost identical to the way that we set them up in the query data sources, so we should be able to skip through this section quite quickly. Let me explain the little app that I've knocked up. It's a combo box with the customer. We'll enter the customer. That will fire a query data source running the ARSQRI business object. It will populate data here. And then we will get an option of being able to pop a new contact and email address here. And when we press the update, we will run a custom data source, a SQL statement to update these fields in the AR customer master file. So let's have a quick look at the data sources. Okay, so we've got a custom data source here. We've already discussed the access methods and the connection strings in the earlier sections. So the key element here is that we're actually look at the SQL statement. Okay, so it's a very straightforward statement. Updating the AR customer master file, we're setting a field to a value from the form and another field from the value of the form, and then making sure that we are using a 15-character customer number. So those of you who know about Transact SQL, we're basically concatenating 15 zeros to whatever you find in that field, and then taking the 15 from the right-hand side. So we'll always make sure we've got 15. We have to do this because App Designer can't possibly infer anything in this statement. This is nothing to do with Syspro or App Designer or anything. It's a simple instruction to a SQL database. Go away and do this. So we have to build into this statement a proper SQL statement. Now, if you remember what I said before in the query stuff, if you can make this statement work in your SQL database, in your management studios maybe first, and then cut and paste it into here, and then substitute the variables, that's the approach to make. If it won't work in the SQL database, it will not work in IDE. It's simple as that. And then obviously you've got all the variables we had before when we were doing the queries. Now, it is at this point that I should stress that updating Syspro databases, tables using SQL is not a recommended method. We would always advise you to use business objects. However, one has to be practical, and in things like this where it's static data, there can be little harm done. But if you were doing a transaction as an example, and maybe the inventory movement, inventory receipt we did in the last exercise is updating probably 15 or 20 tables, there's no way that you're going to be able to replicate the business logic and keep all those tables in sync. So a bit of common sense needs to be applied here when you're using custom data sources on Syspro tables. But if you're using them for external systems, integration and stuff like that, these are a hugely powerful way of doing things. Okay, so let's close that down. We won't bother testing it because it will just simply execute it. And then we'll save that. Right, come back out of here, and then we'll have a quick look at the VB script. Well, here we are once again in VB script. I don't think there's anything here that will take you by surprise. And some constants of readability. Then on initialization, we're disabling a couple of the two fields on the form that will have the new data in it. Then what will happen when we're running it, we will key a custom number into the combo. That will fire up the query business object and populate the existing contact and email on the form. I'm using form update from XML to hard code some data into the new contact and new email fields. Just be aware about that. If that were clear data set to true, then you would immediately wipe out the data you've just populated from the query business object. And the reason I know that is I've just spent 5 minutes trying to work out why my data disappeared. But there we go. So that will update that. And then what we're doing is I'm saving the customer number from the combo into an app-wide variable using the set variable call out, because I want to use it a little bit later on. And just a reminder, there is a different course on variables and integration, which discuss all those. And then ultimately, when we press the update button, what's going to happen is we're going to execute this data source and get a return value back. Now, in a custom transaction data source, the return value will be the response back from the database. And that's what we're doing here, is we're bobbing it into a task dialog and popping it up in like a message box for us. And then finally, I am running a data source refresh on the query data source, and I am passing it the saved customer number, and that will refresh the fields from that data source rather than re-executing just simply a refresh of the data. Very, very straightforward. So let's go and see our little app in action. Here we are on our little app. So we'll just key in our customer number. What that will have done is fired up the query business object. It's brought in the current contact and email, and there's our hard-coded new contact. And if I press update here, it will run our custom. It will do that SQL update statement and then refresh the data in the form. There's our rows affected. This is a typical SQL response back saying it's updated one row. Clearly, you could catch that and do something with it. There we go, updated. So you get the general gist of what they're about. The update, the custom transaction data sources, you can issue any transact SQL or OLEDB or ODBC command in that SQL statement, and you'll get a response back. What you do in there, completely up to you, nothing to do with App Designer or any Syspro business object, but remarkably powerful, and I think really quite useful if you're updating external databases and so on like that. So that's hopefully the end of our transaction data source course. I know it's been a bit of a slog, but there's an awful lot to do, and the only way to get confident in it is use it. So good luck. I'm going to move on now to web services.